I'm going to be going over 7 different ways to purchase a property with no money down. And this applies for investment deals as well as, potentially if it's your primary residence and you want to do some house hacking, and then every other type of deal in between. And I know a lot of people are probably going to say this is clickbait. However, I've used almost all of these strategies, and I'm going to give you examples of each one. So the first no money down type of deal is what's known as an equity partnership. So that's basically where one person who maybe doesn't have any money or resources goes out and finds a really great deal, and maybe they manage the project, and then their partner will be the one that finances pretty much everything, and then you split it 50-50, or you can work out, it's completely subjective. You can work out, 70-30, 80-20, you can work out different arrangements. And when I was first I think this is good if you're completely brand new to real estate, you have no idea what you're doing. It can be a good strategy. However, I would also say it's definitely the most expensive form of financing to give up 50% of a deal. Honestly, finding a good deal is the hardest part in real estate. What you'll soon realize after doing some investing is that finding it is the most valuable part. If you find a good deal, you can find the money pretty easily. There's plenty of people out there that have money to deploy that are looking for something like a good real estate deal, for example. So I would use it if you're getting started, but it's definitely not the best form of no money down. The next type of no money down deal is using private money or hard money lenders. Now, with private money lenders, they can be a little bit more flexible. My private money lenders, if I find them a good deal, they will basically fund like 100% of the property, and then I might have to bring some like closing costs to the table. However, oftentimes you can have what's called gap funding, and that's basically where you just find a lender. It could be another like real estate professional who kind of understands the business and know that you got a pretty good deal, or it could just be like a friend or family member that pays basically for the difference, for the closing costs. Now, the thing with hard money lenders, they're typically they're usually a little bit more strict than private money lenders. So they're going to require you, probably put a minimum of like 10% down. And that's more when you're going to have to, really find the gap funding, gap lenders. You can find those online. And gap lenders are going to be a little bit more expensive because they're not, it's not really secured by anything. So it's kind of like a riskier type of loan. However, that's why I like to try to rely on private money as much as possible, because they can oftentimes be a lot more flexible with what they lend. And then, you maybe find a friend, family member, real estate associate who can bring the remainder to the table. I just did a deal where my hard money lender brought a significant amount to the table, and then I just had a friend that basically brought, it was like $20,000 to cover the rest, and we had a formal agreement set up. The next type of no money down deals are seller financing. And seller financing is a thing where, again, it's going to be completely subjective on the seller, but oftentimes if someone's doing seller financing, they're more motivated, and they might be willing to be flexible. Like some sellers might require a down payment. Other sellers, as long as they're getting a good monthly income that you're paying, they might not require a down payment. And seller financing happens when the house is basically completely paid off, and so the seller will basically become the bank. And you can ask your title company exactly how to structure this. And the reasons why a seller would even do seller financing to begin with is they're going to save some money on closing costs. They can get some passive income every single month, from really a higher interest rate, because typically seller financing, they're going to charge a little bit more than a traditional bank would. And a seller can also oftentimes sell their property faster by doing seller financing and just get rid of the headache, because there's a lot more people that are kind of like looking for flexible terms. And the reason that a buyer would look at a seller financing deal is because, number one, they wouldn't have to go through a bank. And then it's not going to be as many closing costs, and it's going to be a faster transaction. So you don't see seller financing deals too often, but you will come across those, and you should try to become like the transaction engineer, where you can make any type of deal work. Because oftentimes with seller financing, because you don't have to like qualify and do all this other craziness, through the bank, you can oftentimes pay a little bit more for a property. And that's, of course, if it's cash flowing or has a lot of potential and a lot of upside. Before we go to the next strategy, if you're looking for the real estate investing resources that I use on a daily basis, check out the links below. Additionally, if you're looking for real estate mentorship, I do offer different forms of mentorship, so you can reach out to me in one of the links below as well. The next type of no money down deal is what's called subject to financing. And this is kind of a gray area in the real estate industry. It's basically where, the seller still has a loan with the bank, and you basically just overtake their payments. The deed gets transferred to you, but the loan still remains in the seller's name. And the reason it's kind of a gray area is that there's no official agreement with the lender. And every lender has something that's called a due on sale clause. So if the property is transferred, technically, they could force you to sell it. Now, from what I've heard, that almost never happens. Like the bank really wants, just their payments every single month. As long as you're making the payments, the bank is not going to call the loan due. And I was actually just looking at a small apartment building where I was going to do a subject to. And the reason it worked out it was going to theoretically work out for everyone, is that the seller was super motivated and they didn't have enough equity in the property to really sell it the traditional way with paying a real estate agent 5-6% and tons in closing costs and waiting around another 3 or 4 months for this buyer to close. So basically, I was going to come in and overtake their payments. Now, this deal, like I said, they didn't have a ton of equity. So it was basically like a market price. I was basically paying like the market price for this apartment building. However, the reason that I was interested in it is because the monthly payment was pretty low. I could get about $5,000 a month rent. This was a 4-unit apartment building. And I think the guy's payment was like close to $3,000, maybe a little bit over $3,000. And this deal also had a lot of upside. It was in a very up and coming area. So even though I was paying market price at the time, I think in the next like 3 or 4 or 5 years, I'm probably going to look at that property. It's going to be worth like 1 point something. They wanted, I think it was around $750 for this deal. So it would have been a pretty good monthly payment for me, and the seller could basically get this property off their back. Now there would still be the risk that like if for whatever reason I didn't pay the mortgage every single month, since the loan is still in their name, that would really hurt their credit score. So subject to is you really have to find a very motivated seller, good monthly payment, but maybe not a ton of equity in the deal. And of course, you should always talk to a title attorney or do your research for these types of transactions. The next types of no money down deals are FHA and VA loans. Now, before you tell me like VA funding fee and FHA is 3.5%, yes, they are. However, with FHA, you can get the 3.5% as a gift from a friend or associate or coworker or whoever it may be. And then you can have the seller pay the closing costs. If you're buying FHA, you can pretty easily find someone that might be willing to give you 15, 20, 30K, whatever it is, and then just negotiate with the seller to pay your closing costs, which are going to be, probably roughly about 2 to 3%. And the requirements to get approved for an FHA loan are very low. You only have to have, I think you can actually have a 500 credit score. If you have a 500 credit score, I think you have to put 10% down. But I think you have to have a minimum of a 580 credit score, and then you only have to put down 3.5%, get that as a gift, and then potentially just negotiate with the seller. Now, VA loans, it's 0% down. However, there is, I think it's about a 2% funding fee. But again, this is something that you can maybe pay a little bit higher price and then tell the seller to, pay X amount in closing costs so that it would basically be a 0% down transaction for you. In real estate investing, you really have to think of, I think Robert Kiyosaki had a quote where don't say you can't afford something, think about how you could potentially afford something. And that's going to open it up to so many different types of deal possibilities. And the next no money down deal is called wholesaling. And I've done many of these types of deals, and I've also purchased from wholesalers. It's basically where you lock a property up for, let's say, I'll give an example of a deal I just did. The wholesaler had it under contract for $270K. It was an off-market property, an estate type of sale. He sold it to me for $320. He basically assigned the rights. So he didn't close on the deal necessarily. With wholesaling, you're not closing on the deal usually. You're basically just getting an assignment fee, development fee, partnership fee, whatever you want to call it, to sell the rights to another investor. So I was ultimately the person that ended up closing on the deal. The wholesaler made a significant amount, and the seller was able to get the property off their back. And then I was able to get a deal that was basically, in my opinion, about 100K under market value. So wholesaling can be a great way to do real estate investment deals with very little risk because you're not putting your own money into the deal. All you're doing is locking up the property under contract and then assigning the rights to an end buyer. The next type of no money down deal is what's called cross collateralization, or if you want to say just like a home equity line of credit. Basically, I had an apartment building that I really wanted to buy. It was basically 200K under market value, under the appraised value. However, I needed about, I think it was 100 or 120K to close this deal. And the way I did it, because I didn't want to come out of pocket for that, because that would be a lot to come out of pocket, I had another apartment building with a lot of equity. My hard money lender was able to basically put a second lien on that property and use the equity in that as the down payment for this other one so that I didn't really have to come out of pocket pretty much at all. Let me know what you think of these strategies below, or if you have any questions. And also, if you're looking for the real estate investing resources that I use on a daily basis, check out the links below. And if you're also looking for mentorship, I do one-on-one real estate investing mentorships. Reach out to me in one of the links below as well, and we can have a quick chat. chat and see if it's for you. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you on the next one.